So, Prime Minister, may I ask first, how different is it to leading a country than to captaining a sports team? Because leadership is needed in both.
Well, let me first say the similarity. Similarity in both is that you have to struggle. And the dynamics of struggle are such that you only succeed if you learn from the bad times, from your mistakes. You learn and then you pick yourself up. So that's where the similarity is. Otherwise, it's, of course, completely different. Running a cricket team is completely different to running a country. And, of course, different challenges. And then countries with entrenched, strong institutions are much easier to run. A country which faces challenges in the worst challenge in as far as the economy is concerned, huge fiscal and current account deficits. And so in that, obviously, it's a much bigger challenge.
If we start with the hardest issues, Kashmir, we in Europe are wondering, will it ever be a happy place, Kashmir? Is there a solution possible?
Kashmir is something which Pakistan and India have actually gone to war 3 times. And Kashmir remains the biggest hurdle in there being normal relationship between the 2 big South Asian countries. And actually Kashmir is the main hurdle which would lead to, which is in the way of trade prosperity. Because, you know, if the 2 countries were trading with normal relationship, then the best way to reduce poverty in the subcontinent would be trade and normal relations. So Kashmir has a problem that has been very difficult to sort out because, unfortunately, you know, India feels it's a stronger power, might is right, whereas the UN resolutions in way 70 years ago, according to them, the people of Kashmir had the right for self-determination. They were supposed to, through a plebiscite, decide their destiny. They wanted to go to India or Pakistan. That right was never given because India knew that if that right was given, they would opt for Pakistan because it's a Muslim majority province. And India was divided according to the majority religion. So if it was a Hindu majority, it went to India. Or if it was Sikh majority, it went to India. If it was Muslim majority, it became Pakistan. Kashmir was an overwhelming Muslim majority province. And through force of arms, India has occupied it. And they promised but did not allow them to have the right for self-determination. This promise was made by the first Prime Minister, Mr. Nehru, but that promise was never fulfilled. So Kashmir now has become a real problem because what India has a problem for India, because they have forcibly annexed it. It was a dispute between Pakistan and India. They have annexed it unilaterally. And for over 6 months, the people of Kashmir are in an open prison by 700,000 Indian troops. 8 million people of Kashmir have no access to media. Their leaders have been put in jail. Anyone who protests has been put into jail. Students, teenagers, media clamped down. So there's a siege. 8 million people are under siege by 700,000 troops.
And do you think, apart from Kashmir, will there ever be normal relations between Pakistan and India, or is it too much history or too soon, perhaps?
No, I feel that if there was strong, clear-headed leadership in India, this problem would be solved. No problem. Every problem has a solution. Problem in India right now is that they have an extremist ideology. The RSS is an extremist ideology inspired by the Nazis in the 30s. And the founding fathers of RSS, which is ruling India now, were inspired by Hitler. and this racist Arian philosophy of Hitler, and they backed the Holocaust of the Jews because they believe in the ethnic cleansing of Muslims from India. So it is an extreme ideology, and unfortunately it has taken over India. And that's why they put these 8 million Kashmiris who are Muslims, they put them in an open prison. So I do not see much hope with this government, but I do see that in future, an Indian government, a strong leadership, they would want this issue to be resolved. And as I said, every problem has a solution.
Talking about solutions, in Afghanistan there are talks between US and Afghan Taliban. What is Pakistan doing to make it a success?
Well, first of all, you must remember that in Pakistan there are still 2.7 million Afghan refugees here. And there are refugee camps which have over 100,000 people still living here. So what Pakistan can do is put leverage on the Afghans, on the Taliban, some of whom have families here, to make peace in Afghanistan. And I can assure you that Pakistan has tried its best. Since my government has come in, we have left no stone unturned so that there would be peace in Afghanistan. And fortunately, things are moving in the right direction. It's not going to be easy because there's been 19 years of conflict, but it is for the first time moving in the right direction. The Americans are wanting peace and dialogue with Taliban, and Taliban have now sitting with the Americans. The next phase would be ceasefire, then possibly an agreement, if the ceasefire goes well, then an agreement, and then I guess the next phase would be the Taliban sitting with the Afghan government.
Mm-hmm. And what about Pakistan? If you move to Pakistan, are the dark times over? Because there were some very hard years also for Pakistani people with terror-related incidents, bombings, shootings. Do you think that extremism is stamped out?
You see, let me explain what happened in Pakistan. So you need to know the history. In the 1980s, Pakistan was backing the Mujahideen, who were backed by the Americans and CIA and the Western countries, to fight against Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. So it was called the Afghan Jihad. So Pakistan backed the Afghan Jihad. A lot of the Mujahideen came from different countries to fight in Afghanistan. And this was all, of course, encouraged by Western countries and of course, backed by the Americans. And a lot of these groups were trained in Pakistan. So when the Soviets left Afghanistan in 1989, Pakistan and Afghanistan were left with these militant groups, these guerrillas, these different Mujahideen groups. And so come 9/11, now the United States lands in Afghanistan. Now, the same groups who were told that jihad was a good thing against foreign invaders, because the United States came, they now were told that no, against the United States, because these are the good guys, it's terrorism. It was jihad against the Soviets. So, of course, not all of them understood. And Pakistan, by joining the US war, we ended up these groups turning against Pakistan. So that's when we went against this period of terrorism, suicide attacks. 70,000 Pakistanis lost their lives in that 10, 12-year period. And fortunately, and full marks to our security forces, and especially our intelligence agencies, who gave great sacrifices, but they now have controlled the insurgency. And I'm very happy to say that my first year as Prime Minister, 2019 was the safest year in Pakistan since 9/11.
Okay. If we move to another hard issue, you've spoken about the economy, double-digit inflation, huge debt, loan with IMF. People would say how can you succeed? But in the street, people tell to me, the Prime Minister is very resolved because he has proven it in cricket, he has proven it with the hospital, he has proven it becoming Prime Minister. But what can you do to be different than your predecessors to really make it work?
Well, it's like if you inherit a house which is bankrupt and their creditors coming to ask for their money back and their loans, and someone is coming for rent of the house, others are coming for the rent, you've rented a car or something. So for a while that house goes through a tough period. While you cut your expenses and you raise your revenues, so you no longer are indebted, and so you don't have to borrow, and then you have to pay the interest on the loans. So that is a tough period. Every house which borrows and where the expenses are more than its revenues, every house goes through a tough period, and every country which has been in the same situation as Pakistan has to go through what is called the structural readjustment, where you raise your revenues to match your expenditure. And while you cut your expenditure, obviously, the people go through a bad time. Not only did we have this big fiscal deficit and current account deficit, we also have bankrupted utilities. Our electricity, had incurred huge losses. So we had a huge debt in electricity. And then our gas, so that affected our industry, because because of these huge debts, you had to raise the prices of electricity and gas. And when you raise the prices, the industry got affected, because that can't compete with the exports of your neighboring countries, which means you can't reduce your deficit. So you're caught in this debt trap. And so the first year was very difficult. 2019 was a very difficult year for Pakistan. But now, fortunately, we brought the current account deficit down by 75% in 1 year, which was tough but good. Exports are increasing, not that fast, because the world at the moment, the economy overall in the world is slowing down. But we've cut down our imports. We've tried to work on our electricity sector so that we cut down the losses. So it's been a tough period of readjustment, and I expect that this is the year 2020 where the economy will show signs of recovery.
Yeah, because you've spoken about priority, lifting 100 million Pakistani out of poverty, new Pakistan. What is your vision for an ideal Pakistan? Which kind of country would you say Pakistan should be?
My idea of Pakistan is what was the founding fathers' idea of Pakistan, which was an Islamic welfare state, a state which is just and humane, which looks after the state, looks after the bottom tier of the population, the weaker section of the society. And if you ask me, the first Islamic state was the first welfare state in the history of mankind some 14 centuries ago.
State of Medina?
State of Medina. It was a welfare state. And it was a state which had rule of law. It had rights. Every human being had rights protected by the state. And that was the basis of the civilized state, which laid the foundation for the next 7 centuries. It became the leading civilization in the world. And of course, emphasis on education, which was laid by our Prophet, peace be upon him. So therefore, that's my ideal. And if you ask me in modern day, which state would resemble that, I would say Scandinavian states, because they have very high welfare. I find them very civilized. And what China has achieved, China has taken out 700 million people out of poverty in the last 30 years.
With different political systems, welfare state, tax collection is needed then?
Look, first of all, you need to have direction. The leadership in a country needs to know where it is headed, what it wants to achieve. So if your objective is that I will achieve prosperity by raising people above the poverty line, which is what China did. Because China 30 years ago was not that richer an economy. But by lifting people out of poverty, they created extra demand. And then the extra demand meant the entire world's multinationals wanted to be there. And China has, it's remarkable, it's a miracle. But the basis of that prosperity was that the state took a decision. There are priorities to lift people out of poverty. That's what my decision is. Despite all the problems what we face, we have allocated the highest amount of money for poverty alleviation in our history. I mean, despite the economic crunch, we had the outlay for poverty alleviation is the highest today in Pakistan.
And when you're talking about moving economically, there is cooperation with China. What is the message from Pakistan to Europe? What do you expect from Europe, or what do you want to ask from Europe?
Well, trade really, Europe has been very good to us. We have got the GSP plus, which means we get preferential trade agreement with Europe, and that's very positive. And of course, Europe is one of Pakistan's biggest trading partner. So trade really with Europe.
Pakistan is open for business, even in Gawadar. There's still room and place in the port for European companies and countries to invest.
Of course, you see, a CPEC just gives an opportunity to connectivity to China. But it's not exclusive. I mean, Chinese also would want this to become an investment hub for companies from all over the world, especially in Europe.
Mm. Talking about climate change, Europe, there's a lot of political debate about it, but it's one of Pakistan's main challenges as well, and Pakistan is doing a lot. Why is Pakistan doing a lot? Because in contributing to the problem, you're not a big player, so you're doing a lot for solutions.
Well, first of all, I was always an environmentalist because I loved hunting, I loved shooting. And as I grew up, I saw that in Pakistan, two things were happening. Our forests were disappearing, and our wildlife was disappearing. So from becoming a hunter, I became a conservationist. And so I've always, I love Pakistan's wilderness. I think Pakistan has some of the most diverse wilderness in the world. It has 12 climatic zones. From alpine, it goes right down to the coast and the desert. And so being an outdoor person, and I love trekking in our mountains. Our mountains are probably, there's nowhere, I've been everywhere. Nowhere in the world you have the sort of trekking we have in our mountains in the four ranges, Himalayas, Karakoram, Suleiman Range, Hindu Kush. So as I grew up, I realized that the beauty of this country was disappearing because our wilderness was disappearing and our forest cover was disappearing. So when my party came to power in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of one of the four provinces, so we decided to plant 1 billion trees in 4 years, and we did it. And now we've set ourselves targets since I became the Prime Minister of 10 billion trees in Pakistan. And it's really to improve our environment, improve our forest cover, bring back wildlife. But Pakistan is also likely to be affected by climate change more than other countries because this country depends on our rivers. And our rivers, 80% of the water in our rivers comes from the glaciers in the mountains. And because of global warming, these glaciers are melting at a fast rate, and that is a big worry for us.
We have the impression in Europe that Pakistan is opening up to the world, getting out of isolation, and tourism could be a driver to get more people from all over the world to Pakistan. Are there special measurements taken to even accelerate tourism?
Yes, we've opened up Pakistan. 70 countries can get visa at the airport. We have opened up all our areas. And now that it's been one of the safest years, 2019, our tourism doubled in 1 year. So So, Pakistan offers probably the most unique tourism in the world because it's because of its diversity. Firstly, it's an ancient land. The Indus Valley civilization is 5,000 years old. Secondly, it is home to four world religions. Sufism, it has some of the ancient sites for Sufism. Then Hinduism, it has ancient sites for the Hindu religion. Then Sikhism, it has two of the most revered sites in Pakistan for the Sikh religion. And then, of course, Buddhism. The north of Islamabad was the center of the Gandhara civilization. And that is, one of the more, for the Buddhists, this is one of the best places for visiting their ancient sites. And on top of it, we have our mountains in the north. We probably have the most unique mountain tourism in the world. Firstly, it's undiscovered. Not many people know about it. Half the world peaks over 24,000 feet are in Pakistan, including the second highest mountain. So it has diverse tourism. And the cities, 3 cities, are over 1,000 years old. So in that sense, Pakistan is undiscovered. It's not actually, some countries are destroyed by tourism. Pakistan is not. A lot of hospitality here, and with peace now and security in this country, we expect that we will, the level of tourism will grow quantumly in Pakistan.
Finally, may I ask you two perhaps more personal questions which trigger me. Why did you, as a famous sports star, came back to Pakistan? Was it a kind of duty, inevitable? Because you could say, I stay in London or the Bahamas, and into politics is already difficult, coming to Pakistan as well with expectations. So what was the driver to get you into politics?
First of all, I never really lived away from Pakistan. I only went for studying in England for 4 years. And then I used to play professional cricket in England. So that meant summer in England, but winter was always in Pakistan. So I never really went away. Never at any point did I ever want to live away from Pakistan. I never wanted to take a British passport, although I was spending, almost 17, 18 summers playing professional cricket there. But you see, I could never imagine a purposeless existence. My life was always driven from the age of 9. From the age of 9, I wanted to represent Pakistan in cricket. And so from that age onwards, till I left cricket, I was driven by, taking Pakistan to the top of world cricket. And when my last match was Pakistan winning the World Cup. Then I spent the next 10 years building a cancer hospital. My mother died of cancer. And so poor people had nowhere to go if they get cancer. So it took me almost 8 years to build 9 years to build the cancer hospital. And then I decided to go into politics because I felt that the political elite in Pakistan was corrupt. And corruption is the biggest reasons why countries have poverty. It's not lack of resources. Countries are not poor because of lack of resources, because some of the richest countries in terms of resources are poor because of corruption. So I came in on an anti-corruption platform some 23 years ago. And because I was fighting the political mafias, that's why it took me so long to succeed.
And then it's related to the previous question. The image, which I read also from British tabloids, was more like a very liberal, young, successful cricket star, becoming a more religious person. How hard was that, or was it just also another aspect that people in the West didn't see?
Look, if a human being is lucky, if they're lucky, sometimes during their life they will ask themselves 2 questions. 1, what is the purpose of my existence? And 2, what happens to me after I die? And if they are luckier, they will find the answers in spirituality, because science does not answer these 2 questions. So, like everyone else, all the time I would self-analyze, analyze my life. I had more fame than anyone in my country. I had love in this country and an easier life, a privileged life. So I could have spent the rest of my life actually just talking about cricket and living very well. But if you do ask yourself the question, what is my purpose of existence? And the spiritual in the spiritual world, it is not that I should live as a selfish life, which is what, if I wanted, I could have lived a very comfortable, selfish existence. In the spiritual world, you are responsible. The more the Almighty gives you, the more responsibility you have towards other human beings. Hence, my life turned from first to build a hospital for poor people, and then to enter politics and build a welfare state. No matter how much social work I would have done, I could never have helped so many people as you can in government and build a welfare state. So it is all part of that spiritual journey which comes from asking these two questions.
And finally, given the challenges of Pakistan, giving the history, giving what they call the establishment, which there are the other parties, are you never afraid to take up the challenge? Because this is a country where the life of a prime minister means a lot.
Well, you must understand that when you move towards spirituality, so one thing that happens, and my faith tells me, that life and death is in Almighty's hands. And all you have in your hands is effort. We human beings, all we have is the ability to struggle. Whether we succeed or not is not in our hands, it's in Almighty's hands. So I do not fear death, I don't fear failure. All I know is that I will try my best, and once I've tried my best, I leave it to the Almighty. So whatever is His decision, I'll accept it as the will of God.
Mr. Prime Minister, I had so many questions and still have about Pakistan, but thank you very much. Very enlightening.